Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Sarah Wong. Our top stories tonight. Congestion at Shenzhen Bay border controls this morning as an increased quota sees hundreds try to cross into the mainland. The health chief suggests expanding a mainland-style health code system to the rest of the community. And leaders in Sri Lanka succumb to calls for them to step down after protesters raid their homes. Long queues could be seen at the Shenzhen Bay border today after the daily quota for entering the mainland city was raised by 700. In an attempt to shorten the wait, the government will launch an online reservation system within this week. Isaac Lee reports.
Temperatures in Hong Kong reached 33 degrees Celsius this morning, but that didn't stop hundreds of people from braving the heat as they formed lines outside the Shenzhen Bay ports. They were waiting to get tested for COVID before crossing into the mainland. This man said his 6-hour wait was excessive and tough, since he was carrying lots of luggage. But things may soon change for those making their trips later this week, as the government plans to roll out an online reservation system for cross-border COVID tests. Authorities say once the system launches, people hoping to travel to Shenzhen will have to book a time slot. Those who fail to do so will not be allowed to cross. This woman praised the potential arrangement. It is certainly a good thing, since right now we don't know when to come and everyone arrives as early as possible, she said. Today's crowd appeared after the mainland government raised the daily capacity of people entering Shenzhen via Hong Kong from 1,300 to 2,000 2 days ago. Currently, those hoping to enter the mainland have to first secure a room at a so-called health station, which are quarantine centers for travelers, where they are to spend 7 days. That is followed by 3 days of self-monitoring. This afternoon, Health Chief Lo Chung Mau went to inspect the immigration control area. He was seen discussing with staff members on how to speed up the testing process. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
Health officials have warned the city's daily COVID caseload could reach 6,000 in 2 weeks. This came as the health chief suggested Hong Kong could implement a mainland-style color-based health code system. Joanna Ho reports.
Hong Kong's new COVID infections today continued to teeter around the 3,000 mark as it added another 2,992 cases, 219 of which were imported. There were also 2 more COVID-related deaths. Health officials had earlier estimated that daily cases would shoot up to 6,000 in 2 weeks. However, Chuang Shuk-kwan from the Center for Health Protection said this can be slowed down if people go out less and practice social distancing measures. She was also asked about lawmaker Michael Tian's suggestion that hotel quarantine for incoming travelers can be cut down to 3 days, followed by 4 days at home. Chuang replied, saying although the number of imported cases recently have remained low compared with overall figures, all local transmission chains were triggered by travelers that officials had missed earlier. On a separate note, the city's newly minted Secretary for Health Lo Chung Mau revealed on a television show this morning that the government is considering expanding the color-based health code system to the rest of the community, like the mainland and Macau. Currently, residents across the border are restricted according to the color of their QR codes. A green code represents the person is safe, but a red or yellow code means the resident is a confirmed patient or had contact with one and face controlled movement within the community. He also suggested a real name registration requirement for the Leave Home Safe app. Joanna Ho, HKIBC.
Most industrial and commercial businesses in Macau will shut for a week starting tomorrow. This comes as authorities continue to struggle with curbing the latest COVID wave. Some essential services, such as healthcare facilities and supermarkets, have been authorized to remain open, but casinos have been ordered to close. Residents were seen scrambling for food and masks before they begin their lockdown. Macau added another 93 infections from yesterday, taking the tally in the current wave to 1,467. Overseas, at least 14 people were killed and 9 others injured after a group of gunmen opened fire at a bar in the South African town of Soweto. Devastated relatives burst into tears as police and paramedics rushed to the scene. Authorities said the attackers appear to have randomly targeted the patrons. The massacre came after 22 young people were found dead in a nightclub in East London last month under unknown circumstances. Sri Lanka's president and prime minister have agreed to resign after thousands of protesters stormed their homes amid a worsening economic crisis. The angry crowds vowed to stay put until the leaders stepped down, while the opposition raced to install a new government. The Sri Lankan capital of Colombo resembled a war zone as angry protesters clashed with police outside the residence of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. Tensions have reached a boiling point as Sri Lankans continue to be squeezed by skyrocketing cost of living and acute food, fuel, and medicine shortages. Wickremesinghe succumbed to the discontent as he agreed to leave office after only 2 months in the post. But that failed to assuage some radical protesters who broke into Wickremesinghe's home and set it ablaze. The mayhem started earlier when thousands of people overwhelmed security forces and stormed the home of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The 73-year-old has been under pressure to quit immediately as he was blamed for the country's worst financial crisis in 7 decades. Some of the protesters went on to take a dip at the president's swimming pool, while others roamed around the kitchen and rooms. Many were outraged after fighting riches, including millions of rupees in the compound, while ordinary people have been scrambling for basic goods.
The people show the nation and the international community the power of the people.
At the moment, I think the people's struggle is moving successfully, and I wish all the best for the people's struggle. And at the end, we will make the full sales happen.
The groundswell of fury was the final straw that pushed Rajapaksa out, but he will hold on until Wednesday for a peaceful transition of power. Opposition parties rushed to form a new government to tide the country over the political storm. The Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka, meanwhile, urged its nationals not to take part in the protests and stay vigilant. Voters in Japan are heading to the polls as the ruling Liberal Democratic Party is set to ride a surge of support in the upper house elections. The polls came as Japan is still reeling from shock from the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. The 67-year-old was shot in broad daylight when campaigning for a LDP candidate in the western city of Nara. More than 540 candidates from 15 parties are vying for 124 seats in the upper chamber, which wields less power than the lower house. Back locally, Executive Council convener Regina Ip said the government had considered a number of factors before watering down a pay rise for civil servants. It came after several workers' unions expressed dissatisfaction over a recent announcement. Yip said she understood government employees may be disappointed since their wages have already been frozen for 2 years. But a 2.5% increase has already forced the SAR to spend an extra $6 billion, she explained. Earlier, the city's authorities decided not to follow a pay trend survey report, which suggested civil servants should get a pay rise of 3 to 8% according to their ranks. Financial Secretary Paul Chan has denied that an enhanced currency swap arrangement with the mainland amounts to transferring the SAR's exchange reserve. He added that the tax on vacant first-hand flats may be launched again, Isaac Lee has more.
Last week, the city's monetary authority and the People's Bank of China jointly announced that the currency swap mechanism between Hong Kong and the mainland had become a permanent arrangement. Its size was also expanded from 500 billion to 800 billion yuan. But this has concerned some investment analysts who suspect the mainland is using close ties between the Hong Kong and US dollars to internationalize the renminbi. They say the amendment means 1/4 of Hong Kong's foreign currency reserve could be transferred to the central bank. But Financial Secretary Paul Chan dismissed these claims on radio this morning. He said Hong Kong needs the PRC currency to maintain its position as a leading offshore hub of the renminbi. Chan, who is also leading a designated committee to boost land supply, vowed to speed up the progress of the Northern Metropolis and Land How Tomorrow projects, which were proposed by his former boss Carrie Lam. Also on housing, Chen did not rule out the possibility of reintroducing a tax on vacant first-hand properties, a plan proposed by the previous cabinet, which was scrapped after causing an uproar. Authorities had suggested charging homeowners who left their flats empty for more than 6 months. This came as the number of vacant first-hand flats remained at around 12,000 in between March and May. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
Muddy waters flooded traffic lanes in Kwai Chung this morning after an underground pipe burst. Lei Muk Road was covered after the water brought up sand and mud from underneath the ground. Passing vehicles had to slow down. Officers were called to the scene at around 9:30 a.m. and sealed off part of the road. Staff from the Water Supplies Department later arrived to shut the valves and make repairs. On to the weather now. Fine and very hot tomorrow. Temperatures range between 28 and 34 degrees. The sunny weather will continue on Tuesday and Wednesday. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for this Sunday night. Join us for updates at 11. I'm Sarah Wong. Thanks for watching. Please stay safe and take care.